And
Much so, we're ready for the lay-ins in the morning.
oh, Victoria, it is so lovely to see you again. And as the very first returning guest for Real Menopause Talk, because I'm deeply excited to hear about where you've got to. And of course, the release of your beautiful book that if anyone follows you on Instagram will already know about. And if anyone follows me on Instagram, I hope they already know about it as well. My Menopause, My Journal, My Rules. It is a masterpiece. So we will get into that and how it came to be. But first of all, in case any of the listeners missed your debut on the pod, would you like to catch them up with who you are and whereabouts you are in terms of menopause, how it came to be?
Of course. Well, thank you for having me back. It's very exciting. I've been looking forward to this so much. So, yeah, I'm Victoria Hardy, also known as Ginge Unhinged, fondly just called Ginge. And I am in surgical menopause, and I have been since the age of 33. So I am a content creator, an author now, which is weird to say, and just really raising the voice around all types of menopause, but particularly those in surgical menopause, medical menopause, and with premature ovarian insufficiency. So those of us a little bit younger going through it that don't always get a voice in the conversation. So yeah, I went into a medical menopause before my hysterectomy. I was put on a drug for 6 months to kind of tidy things up. And then I had a hysterectomy where they removed everything, including my remaining ovary. I'd already had one taken before. And of course, that pushed me straight into a surgical menopause. And that was following kind of endometriosis, adenomyosis, and I was at risk of 3 cancers. So it was an operation that definitely had to happen because I'd been in decades of pain and 18 operations, and I was tired. I was ready for it to happen. What I wasn't ready for was the aftermath. And of course, that has led me to now talking about it and raising awareness, because it's still not that talked about around hysterectomies.
Very much so. And I've even had the question from a lot of people, why would you have a hysterectomy? And of course, there are myriad of reasons. Yeah. So raising as much awareness as possible is crucial, and you're doing a fantastic job of that. Last time we spoke, you were expecting or awaiting an estrogen implant, which had already been delayed. We'd had months and months of shortages in the UK of HRT in its other forms, and this was the one that was going to help you. And then even in our emails and various exchanges after recording, you had further wait. So what happened next, and how are you doing now?
So it was really interesting because I loved our conversation last time, but I can really recognize how on the floor I was with everything and just exhausted and trying to continue to push through, and how different I feel now, kind of all that time on. So yeah, it was a 9-month wait for the original implant, and that was due to shortages and then the catching up and eventually getting in to see the specialist. I had to travel 2 counties away to get it because my local NHS trusts on the South Coast don't provide this implant. And for me, it was a real necessity because I don't absorb other estrogen. So it was like the last chance for me to kind of feel like me again, I guess. So yeah, I ended up having the implant in September. It was a very quick and easy procedure after waiting so long, about 10 minutes.
Wow.
They make a little incision in your stomach and pop it in and a couple of stitches and off you go within 10 minutes, very quick and easy. And it actually started to take effect within about 10 days. I was really surprised because my estrogen levels were just so low. And I started to notice symptom changes, like hot flushes would go and the night sweats started to go. It took a little bit longer to kind of the other stuff to kick in, the anxiety, the low moods, and like the physical aching joints, and just generally feeling like I had energy. That took quite a few months. And then, of course, I came round to where I should have had it done in March again, and the fight happened again. So I had to really advocate for myself, following really just a system that's not quite put in place yet to kind of put these back into our body in a timely way. And I ended up actually having to make a PALS complaint, which I really didn't want to do, but I was on the floor again, and it got resolved very quickly. So I'm now on my second one. And yeah, I feel really, really great. I've seen such a huge difference. Not perfect, of course. And a lot of that is lifestyle. So getting out of routine. It's been a long time. So yeah, but I'm finding my feet again, and it feels really good.
That is so good to hear. And interesting that you, listening back, saw that you were on the floor.
Yeah.
And yet to the rest of us, or certainly to me, yes, you were clearly struggling emotionally with the weight and the anticipation and then the weight again and being let down, as anybody would. But you were such a ray of sunshine and so positive throughout it. I think that often represents what women do. Somebody I was speaking to, I think it was a personal trainer actually last week, and they said women are willing to suffer. They just do. And often they don't recognize how much they suffer. They just push and push and push, particularly if they're striving for something. What would you say to other women who maybe don't recognize that they're on the floor, but know that they are trying to push?
I think it's really important to always self-reflect. I was definitely somebody that continued to just spin that wheel all the time. And that led me to a really, really dark place, as we talked about before, in 2019. So I think with last year, really recognizing where I'd been and just reflecting, checking in, whether that's daily, weekly, every couple of weeks, just to say, how am I feeling? Where am I feeling that I'm pushing too much? Or where am I taking my control focus? Because when you're going through something like either a wait for healthcare or things feel like they're out of control, we have this momentum that we just want to fix it all and push on. And it's actually being able to sit there and reflect on what's in my control, what isn't I can let go of, either mentally, physically, and just really come back to the foundations of, the simple things: walking, drinking enough, journaling, whatever it is that kind of continues to be your foundation, bring in the joy. So it just relieves that pressure valve.
And how often do you have to have your implant replaced?
So I'll have it every 6 months. So my next one is in October.
And fully booked in, non-negotiable, yes. Date in the diary.
Yes. I mean, let's hope they don't change it, cancel it or whatever, but it's fully booked in. And I made sure I did not leave the hospital this time without having that booked in. So I was not going to be burnt again.
Good. Very glad to hear that. So I do really want to talk about your beautiful book. And it speaks for itself. There's so much even in the title. I feel it speaks for all of us, whether surgical or non-surgical menopause as well. What gave you the idea to actually write a book? Because it's no mean feat. And when you look inside your book, it's not just a book. There is more to it as well. So we'll get to that in a moment. But what made you want to write a book to begin with?
So initially I was actually writing another book before this. I think I'd always wanted to write a book of some sorts, and I will definitely pick that one back up now that this one is done. So I've always loved words and expressing through words. I think that's just my way. But I came across really the idea that, for me, going into menopause younger, I didn't feel like I was part of the conversation or that there was anything that particularly spoke to me. And I started writing this almost 2 years ago now. So there wasn't, even 2 years ago, there wasn't, this was prior to Davina McCall's program. There was, a few odd books on the shelf, but they weren't kind of speaking to me. And there was kind of two things. One, I was really curious about lots of different types of menopause because I felt out of the societal box, as I say. So I was thinking there must be other people that are trans and experiencing it, or what does culture feel like? What does it feel like if you're in a same-sex couple, bearing in mind the different ages and experiences that we have in itself. So I really wanted to bring together stories. And that could have been quite easily done in just a book of stories and then just my memoir, I guess. But I wanted it to be immersive. So journaling for me was a game changer. I talk about this so much. When I was in the depths of depression, that is where it started, like strategizing and segmenting my thoughts out onto paper. And there's something so cathartic and powerful about that. So I wanted to merge those two together rather than doing a wellness journal and a memoir. I wanted to merge that together so that it gave the reader an experience of not feeling alone, but also empowered themselves to take the vulnerability in themselves and do something about it, and take them on a bit of a journey. So that's how the idea came to incorporate it all.
And it does take the reader on a journey. And I don't use the term lightly because I know journey gets used all the time. But you go on a ride, you go on a pathway. It's life affirming and uplifting, and there's so much emotion put into it that you feel what you've been through and also are given this gift to feel what you're going through. So the opportunity for self-reflection that we just spoke about is right there. There is one of the most beautiful phrases or sentences that I've come across. There's a beautiful connection to self that happens, acting like a portal to step up into what you're really capable of. And just that gives me goosebumps all over again. I love that so much. It's one of the aspects of menopause that I feel is very much overlooked. And if you're not in it, understanding it is a bit of a challenge. But it's often related to perimenopause and the transformation that perimenopause is afforded and labelled as. You didn't have that luxury. You went from premenopausal to menopausal overnight, literally. So can you talk about the transformation, the connection to self for you?
So for me, I think it was riding all of the symptoms, all of the mental side of things, not feeling included or that I had a voice, or that I had a place, just feeling very, very lost. At first, of course, that was all very much at first and over the first couple of years after my hysterectomy. And when we get to a point where certain things have been taken away, there's so much to process: trauma, grief, why me, where's my confidence got? There's just so much, whilst trying, like we said right at the beginning of this, to just carry on being a mother, being at work, being a wife, doing all of the things. And when help kind of feels like sometimes the doors are slightly shut, so again, things like we know that GPs need more training or there's not enough awareness, it's like, where do you go? And you have to go back to self. You have to dig in deep and think, okay, I have gone through all of this. Why is it not necessarily why is it happening to me, but sort of why is it happening for me? Like, what's the narrative that I'm going to tell myself? My surgery was ultimately, as it is for a lot of people, life-changing, life-saving. So what am I going to do now? And it's reconnecting into that purpose. And I think the transformation that happened for me was learning about my body, accepting the mess of my mind, and that, it will always be a ride, as it is for all of us. And that's beautiful because, we can't be happy all the time, but also connecting into soul. And I was big on self-development beforehand, but really connecting into the soul and what my purpose is and what really lights me up now. That was the transformation. It's like a reckoning, and you do, you lose a few bucks along the way. Like, you have that kind of like, right. Oh, and I always say wisdom is not an age thing. It's definitely, when we go through something, it's like a reckoning of, okay, I'm here now.
Are there still moments where you feel you have yet to transform further?
Always. The job is never done. It's never done. And it comes with how we feel about ourselves, how we feel about other people. There's days when we do lose confidence. The day before yesterday, I was in a bit of a dip again. I was a bit like, oh my goodness, like, it's really hard to get this book out. Have I done the right thing? It doesn't matter how much kind of validation you get from outside, you still suddenly feel, oh, I've got that imposter syndrome, or I'm not good enough, or whatever. So it comes in waves, but it's sitting with that, acknowledging it and not pushing it down and going, oh, why do I feel like that? What's my intuition trying to tell me here? And then you can kind of move through it and then on to the next and kind of learn from it.
I love the way that your book helps people do that as well with the styling. It is so entertaining just flipping through it before you even get to the stories and to all the nuggets that you give, the font changes and the illustrations, the patterns, everything has been so carefully thought out. How did you begin to put that together?
So, well, of course, it started with the words, and that started from notes, and then formulating that through. And I self-published this book. You know, I went to publishers, and I got great feedback for the idea of it. But I was not celebrity enough, unfortunately, which is kind of fine. You know, I get it. They're publishers, they're there to make a lot of money. And I remember thinking, I'm not going to wait for the yes. One, because this needs to be out there and it's a message that needs to be out there, whether it sells 3 copies or 300,000 copies, you know, like somebody I believe will be helped from this book. But what that did was it put kind of the power back in my hands as to design it exactly how I wanted to design it, to put the words in there that I wanted, to illustrate it myself, to pick the title, to choose the cover, to, like every single page in that book, I have gone through with a fine-tooth comb with the help of a printing and a designer, because they format stuff for you, which they're amazing. Shout out to Davina, because she was just incredible with working with me. I was very needy. But we went through it with a fine-tooth comb, with just thinking about how would this make people feel? How can we make this feel different and not boring? I'm not saying other books boring, but just keep the reader engaged, and also have the beauty of it, but also that they want to scribble in it and want to feel like a journal and rip out the pages and make it messy. So yeah, and actually I wasn't going to illustrate it, but one of my friends was like, you have to. And that was the most nerve-wracking thing, actually, because I don't really put my drawings out there. And that was the kind of the most nerve-wracking thing. But the leopard print, you know, I'm obsessed. And so it's so funny, even like the cover, we went through every colour under the sun. And I was like, why am I struggling so much with colour? I was like, it's literally because I just like black and white, like, you know. So that's what we went with. And it kind of, I wanted it to be the book that I wish I'd had, or, you know, that I could have read going into my surgery.
It is unlike any other book that I've seen, and I've got a few back in my library of menopause books, and I've sifted through quite a few in the likes of Barnes and Noble or Waterstones or wherever, and there are some fantastic books, and they're sciencey and they're fascinating and they're very useful and informative. But this goes beyond that, and maybe it isn't sciencey, but after reading a number of sciencey books, it is nice to have the option to read something that is more entertaining and still really informative, and that you can connect with. I think that's the magic of it. It is truly unique. So you've achieved all of that. And I mean, I can't speak of it highly enough. I absolutely love it and want everybody to have it.
Me too.
So what are your next plans?
So my next plans really are continue to write, because I think it's important to keep that flow going. And I will definitely pick up where I left off before this, with kind of doing something a little bit different, still with that connection and that, you know, talking about things that make us beautifully human, because that's kind of what I'm about. But yeah, it's really just about trying to get this out to as many people as possible, talking about it, sharing, donating it to hospitals, just doing as much as I can to help people in this way. And who knows, I hope that it just reaches and helps as many people as possible. But the writing will continue, and that's what lights me up. So
I'm very glad to hear that. If there were one thing out of the book that you would like everybody to read or to understand or to really take in, what would it be?
oh my goodness,
I
that's
know
such a
there's so
hard
much.
question because there's like 12 rules in there. Oh wow, one thing. Okay, I'm gonna have to go with, can I choose a section?
Yes,
So
yes, you can.
I
Because
would have to
also,
go. I would have to go with the section around finding what your soul needs, because I think it's quite easy for some of us to connect in with our bodies. Like, do we ache? Do we hurt? Are we hot? Like, is our sex drive low? Like, and that's all covered. And also mentally, we know there's a lot out there, and that's talked about a lot. I think going deeper to that inner layer, and we talked about it going back to self and really feeling into that, it kind of helps you advocate, feel stronger, understand your power and what empowerment really feels like. And that kind of has a knock-on effect to everything. So that's kind of, that would be for me
the favourite one.
really important message of menopause, that it's not all bad, that it's, there is this fierceness that comes with it.
I think that is so important as well, because there has been a lot of fear-mongering and scaremongering. And I do understand where it comes from and why it may have a place, but it's also important to know that it's not all bad. And the community around it, I know you've got a huge amount of support for the book. That was another question I wanted to ask, actually. How did you come up with the rules? And as far as I was reading the title, it's yours, Victoria's menopause journal and rules, but also it's the reader's menopause journal and rules as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where did that stem from?
So, you've got it. And I think it's that play with words, that it's like, these were the things that I found and discovered. And I talk about sharing the things that I liked and loathed. And it's about the reader trying them, not trying them, finding their own things, because we're all so different in what we like. And the rules really, it started quite organically, almost editorial, in like, okay, this is a great book, but we need to kind of section it. So I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do that. And I really like to break rules. And it's funny because I think, although we're saying there are 12 plus 1 rules, because we wanted the ultimate rule at the end, these are not hard and fast. It's about the person making their own prescription, making their own destiny and rules, because what is right for one is not right for the other. So that's kind of like, it's a strong word to use, and I think it's kind of powerful to say this is our time and we can do it how we want to.
What has been your most enjoyable part of releasing the book so far, or putting it together, releasing or the whole thing?
So obviously writing it was such a journey. It was we've used that word again, but I'm going to have an ick moment. But it's so funny. Somebody said to me, how long do you think this will take you? And I was like, I'll knock it out in 2 weeks. Like, what? It was nearly 2 years. I think I had my business head on. So really exploring writing for yourself in that way was just it was such a learn. I really enjoyed the experience. That was beautiful. Illustrating it was challenging because it challenged my imposter syndrome for sure, but it was really mindful to do that. So I loved actually doing that. I didn't quite realize we were going to do that many, but I got into it. It was good. But receiving the book for the first time. So when I got that, it wasn't actually the finished one. It was the draft one. I got it and I had such a rush of emotion. And I remember saying, whatever happens now, whether this sells, doesn't sell, people are interested or not, like, I've done it. I've written a book that is on my shelf for my kids to read, for my husband to read, which he did. So that was a big moment, him reading it through, because he hadn't read any of it. He was like, I don't want to read any of it before it's there. That was just such a big moment of, oh my God, I've done it. And it's there. Like, so many people say they're going to do something and then don't. And I was like, I've done it. So that was cool. But yeah, sending it out, wrapping it with friends, people actually buying it across the world. Like, it's insane. So every time one was put in the box, I was like, this is going off, and just so much love into it. So yeah. And the feedback's been amazing. Like, honestly, I'm like,
what was your husband's feedback, first of all?
He was like, oh, you haven't made me like out to sound very nice. And I was like, and he said, oh, Tom Hardy, hey? Chris Hemsworth, hey? And I was like, well, you know, I said, look, I was like, I can't picture you as the perfect husband. No one has a perfect husband. But yeah, he was very proud. And I always say this is our story, because we've been together for a long, long time, since we were very young. And he's lived this with me. We've done this together. And he was very proud. So yeah, that was good. And we're still together, so it's all right.
Tom Hardy just sort of, on the side, just in
Tom
case.
Hardy comes along, and then I'll do a different Hardy.
Of course, the surname. What have been your favourite pieces of feedback?
One of my standout pieces of a message that I received from somebody that I didn't know, because I've had beautiful messages from people that I do know, which is always lovely, but from somebody that I didn't know, that just said, I just feel so seen. And I was like, oh, yeah, it really got me. It makes me quite emotional now, because that is exactly what I hoped for, is just for somebody to not feel alone like I felt alone. So that simple words, not long messages, just, I just feel so seen. And that was just so powerful. But yeah, I mean, it's been beautiful. People that know me saying, oh, I thought it'd be all right, but we didn't realize it'd be this good. And I'm like, oh, I'm shocked. So it's just been really lovely, and people enjoying it in, as I said, other countries is mad. Norway, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, America, like, what?
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So where can people get your beautiful book?
So they can get it on my website, which is gingeunhinged.com, or if you follow me on Instagram or TikTok, there's always the link in the bio, and it's on Amazon as well.
Fantastic. Is there anything you would like to add, Victoria?
Just thank you for this wonderful conversation, as always. I'm so privileged to be back here. And I just think, just everybody listening, just remember that you are fierce. Like, you're so strong, whether you're feeling it right now or not. Like, just lean into those feelings, and, you will find that like badass within, because it's there.
Thank you so much for your time and for coming back, and for your beautiful, beautiful book and putting it out for everybody. I can't wait for more people to buy it and read it and just enjoy the time with it.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much.